Welcome to Single Serve in Excel. Today we're going to do an overview of pivot tables. This will be a series of videos on pivot tables. So what is a pivot table? A pivot table is the name of a special type of data summary table that you can use to analyze large sets of data. This is useful because pivot tables work their magic without making you create formulas to perform calculations. This allows you to arrange and rearrange the data by rotating the rows and columns. We're going to manually create a pivot table because that's how real power users do it. We're going to use a dataset called Heavy Metal Bands 2017, which you can download by clicking on the link in the description below. Let's take a look at the data. We have the band name, the number of fans they have, the year they were formed, their country of origin, and the style of music that they play. So let's create a pivot table off of this data. The first thing we'll do is click on the Insert tab, and then click on the Pivot Table command button. You'll see that Excel opens up a Create Pivot Table dialog box, and it already has the data source highlighted for you. You'll see that Excel highlighted cells A2 through E4973. I would advise against limiting your data range like this because if more data is added to the bottom of the dataset, the pivot table will not pick up on it when it is refreshed. So it's good practice to always assume that new data will be added, so always highlight the entire columns like this. Next, we're going to select where we want the pivot table to be placed. Under Choose where you want the pivot table report to be placed, click on Existing Worksheet and then Location. We're going to click on Sheet 1 and I'm going to put it in the middle of the worksheet. Typically, you won't want to put in such a weird location, but since this is a tutorial, I want to avoid as much zooming as possible. After you've indicated the source and location for the pivot table, Excel adds a placeholder graphic with the text, "To build a report, choose fields from the pivot table field list." This placeholder graphic will show you where the pivot table will go and at the same time displaying a pivot table task pane on the right side of the worksheet. The pivot table fields task pane is divided into two areas. The first part is the Choose Fields to Add to Report list box with the names of the fields from the heavy metal dataset, and the second area identified by the heading Drag Fields between areas below, which is divided into four quadrants: filters, columns, rows, and values. Everything you need to create a pivot table will come from this area of the workbook. The filters area acts as a filter for the entire report. The columns has your fields appear in the table's column headings, rows has your fields appear in the table's row headings, and values are the data that will be summarized in your table. Let's work at an example. Let's go back to the dataset and let's summarize how many bands were created in each country. So let's go back to the pivot table and let's bring in origin, which is country, and let's put that in rows, and band name in values since that's the item we want to summarize. You can see that the pivot table lists each country and how many bands were formed in each one, but let's make this a little cleaner and let's sort the data. Right click on the pivot table, let's go to sort and go from largest to smallest. We can see that the USA has had the largest bands formed in it, followed by Sweden, and we can even scroll all the way down the bottom and see which countries had the least bands formed. We got Azerbaijan, Bolivia, Ecuador, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, etc. Let's take this pivot table a step further. This time, let's see which countries has the most metal fans. So we'll remove band name out of the pivot table by simply dragging it back up to the pivot table fields, and let's drag in fans into the values. You'll see that Excel automatically does sum of fans. And once again, let's sort it. And we can see that the USA has the most fans, but that's a little hard to read, so let's go ahead and format that number. If you go back to the values box and click on the little down arrow and go to Value Field Setting, the Value Field Setting dialog box opens. So let's go to Number Format, and let's do number, no decimal, use a comma separator, and click OK. And then OK again to close off the value field settings. There, that's easier to read. Now we can see that the USA has 130 million fans, with Venezuela with the least metal fans with 1,000. Let's take this data a step further. Let's say we want to know which countries have the most fans by a particular style of music. So what we want to do is bring down style into the filters tab, because we want this to apply to the entire data set. So now that we have the styles drop-down box, let's go ahead and pick a style. Let's click alternative. Click OK. And now you see that the USA has the most metal fans of the style alternative. Now let's say you want to pick multiple filters. Checkbox, select multiple filters, and then pick another style. Let's go ahead and pick heavy speed. So now we're looking at alternative and heavy speed data set, and the USA still has the most fans with 1.4 million fans. So let's work an example of a pivot table using the column section of the pivot table. Right now our pivot table is sorted by 2 styles of music, the country, and the number of fans in those 2 styles of music. Let's remove the style filter and bring in all the styles again. Now we're back to our previous pivot table of total fans by all styles, but I want to know how many fans are in each style of music. So I'm going to take the styles field and drag it to the column section. We're going to end up with a very long pivot table since there's so many styles of music. And as you can see, we have country in the row section, and we have each style of music in the columns with their total number of fans for each style by country. As a bonus tip, let's say we wanted to know which bands make up the 1.4 million fans in the alternative style in the United States. The long way to do it is to go to the Data tab and filter by those criterias. But since we created a pivot table, all we have to do is double-click on the 1.4 million fans, and a new data sheet will be created with the data already filtered for you. Here you can see these are the bands that make up the 1.4 million in the alternative style in the United States. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, leave a comment in the section below. Also, like and subscribe and click the bell icon for updates on new videos.